I grow sticky, fat, dank nugs. I love growing marijuana outdoors, but I find so many advantages to growing marijuana indoors. And that's what this show is about.
I am going to construct a basic indoor grow room with products I have easily obtained from my local hardware, home, or garden center. Then I'll go through all the steps of growing, from germinating my imported grade A seeds to harvesting at least a quarter pound of CRIP top-notch Sinsemillas marijuana every 2 months. Welcome to my grow room. Everything I have here I've bought from local home and garden center. This is how I grow over a quarter pound of CRIP marijuana every 2 months. Notice I've divided the rooms. Over here I have a flowering room. Right here is my vegetative room. Here is where I keep my mother plants and I keep my young growing plants called clones. When they reach a certain size, I take them and I put them over into the flowering room. As long as I keep my plants here, they will not bud. They will continue to grow. Only when I think they're ready, then they go over to here. My vegetative room has 18 hours of light a day. It imitates the long days of summer. I use simple 4-foot fluorescence. That's all I need to grow my mothers and to grow my clones. As soon as I put my clone plants into this room, they begin to flower. That's because this room only has 12 hours of light a day. It imitates the short days of fall and winter when it's time for marijuana to throw its flowers. It is impossible for marijuana to grow without 3 essential things: light, water, and air. For my vegetative room, I use 4-foot fluorescents, cool white and warm white bulbs. That's all I need for my clones and to keep my mother plants growing big. For this room, I need a little more juice. I use a 400-watt high-pressure sodium with a 430-watt high-pressure sodium bulb with a blue spectrum. This is all I need to get this. I use filtered water and the best nutrients. I water my plants using a hydroponic system. My plants love it. I first learned to build a hydroponic system by purchasing a complete prefabricated system from a garden store. Now I can build a basic custom hydroponic system using inexpensive parts from the local home or garden center. Air movement is so important. I use oscillating fans and squirrel cage fans to keep the air moving in my indoor grow rooms. Now with these 3 things in mind, light, water, and air, I can begin construction of my new grow room. I can build a grow room almost anywhere. But if I were to close my eyes and dream of a perfect indoor grow room location, well, it'd be right here in the basement. I really like this basement. There's plenty of room to work with. This basement also has fresh air vents, so I won't be needing this to cut any holes in the house. Another big bonus with this room, electricity. This place is already wired, and it's a good thing too, because I'm no electrician. The first thing I'm going to do is build a light-proof barrier, splitting the room in half. First step in building a light barrier, take in measurements. Make a few cuts. Couple screws later, voila, a simple wood frame. Now that I made this basic wood frame for my light barrier, I've made it 3 feet wide because that's all the room I'm going to need. Now all I have to do is staple up this black plastic. I use little strips of cardboard between the plastic and the staple. That way the plastic doesn't rip. What I've done here is successfully divided my 10-foot wide basement into 2 5-foot sections. I choose this room to be the vegetative room. It's going to have 18 hours of light per day, thus replicating the long days of summer. But this is where the magic happens. This is the flowering room. It has 12 hours of light per day, thus imitating the shortened days of fall and winter. This is where the plants do all the work. In the vegetative room over there, I do all the work, all the cloning, all the mothering, all the caring. But here, this is where the plants do all the work. Before anything gets budded in this room, I have to section it off from the vegetative room. I'm going to do that just like I made this light barrier right here, with black plastic, staple gun, what I've done here is staple the top part of this plastic to the wood frame that I built. That way it's real easy for me to roll it up. I've also placed hooks on either side of this stud. That way I can just bungee and my door's up. It's imperative that light from the vegetative room does not disturb the sleep of the plants in the flowering room. It's because of this that I'm going to Velcro the door shut. When I need to open it, when I need to close it, you know the story. I've stapled this one side of the Velcro into the frame, and I have aligned and pulled the sticky part on the other side, and I did it all the way down the frame. All I have to do is release the door and stick them on. Now it's light proof. I'm going to begin with the construction of the vegetative grow room. This room's going to have 18 hours of light per day. I have plenty of room to work with, 3 feet depth, 5 feet width, and 8 feet of height. All I need to start off with is this power strip. I'm going to plug all my 4-foot fluorescents into this power strip. Because of this, I plug the power strip into this timer. It's preset for 18 hours a day, on at 6 in the morning, off at midnight. Now I can hang up the 4-foot fluorescents. It doesn't matter what type of hood I have. What does matter are the bulbs. I need a cool white and a warm white bulb on each of these hood setups. I measure the distance between the hanging chains on each of the hoods. This one's about 41 inches. And if you look up at the ceiling, I've placed these boards about 41 inches apart from each other. I've also put in hooks for each set of lights so that the lights sit about 1 inch from each other, and they'll sit right here perfectly above the plants. I use 5-foot long chain pieces on each side of the 4-foot fluorescents. That way, I can drop the fluorescent lights all the way down within inches of the tops of the plants. Temperature and airflow are very important. I'm really lucky in this basement that I have a lot of free moving air, especially with this oscillating fan. I'm not going to even need this squirrel cage for this room. I'm going to need it for the budding room for sure. If I was in an attic or a closet or someplace where there's a lot of stagnant air, then I'd throw one of these in because they work great. But for this room, this fan will be just fine. Plants love light. The more, the better. Don't be fooled by imitations. Mylar works the best for reflecting light. So I put it all over the room. With this reflective Mylar and these 4-foot fluorescents, that's all the lights my plants are going to need in this vegetative grow room. I could use model halides, I could use even a high pressure sodium, but there's no need. My mothers, my clones, my production plants, everything can be raised here on 18 hours of light with no problem. Table's done. Here I have a 2-foot by 4-foot piece of plywood. I cut 2 holes on either end, which are for the drainage nozzles of the hydroponic system that's going to sit right here. If my plants had to rely on me to water them 3 times a day consistently, well, I probably wouldn't have any bud to smoke. That's one of the reasons I use a hydroponic watering system. Another reason is plants grow faster in a soilless mixture. I usually save 2 to 4 weeks on maturing plants just because I use a hydroponic system. Looking at all these parts I've selected, it can be really intimidating. I've flooded my house 10 times until I realized the basic rule of the hydroponic system. Whether you make your own like I am, or I go out and purchase one from the store, the principle is always the same. You have to have the planter higher than the reservoir. Then when the pump is turned off in the reservoir, the planter will always drain. It's important to have a drainage. I found this perfect 2-foot by 4-foot plastic tray that I'm going to use as my planter. I have this 20-gallon plastic tub that I'm going to use as my water reservoir. And all these parts are going to connect the two together. First, I'm going to get 5/8 inch outer diameter, 1/2 inch inner diameter, black plastic vinyl tubing. I'm going to cut 3 pieces 5 feet long, 2 for my exit and 1 for my entrance, connecting my reservoir to my planter. Then I'm going to get a pump. A pump has a 1/2 inch diameter to fit perfect for the hose. These nozzles are perfect. They're 1 inch diameter, excellent for my drill bit, and they have a 1/2 inch hookup, perfect for the hose. These drip nozzles are perfect. I can get them at almost any home garden center. They're super easy to hook up, stick in your plant, and my hose fits on the end just perfectly. I've pre-drilled 2 1-inch holes on either end of my planter. Now all I have to do is hook up these drainage nozzles with some aquarium silicone all around the edges. I put some extra silicone on the backside and do it just hand tight. Perfect. Now that the silicone is dry, I can put my black tray right up on my wood, putting the nozzles in the holes that I cut in the wood, and I can hook up my line. I connect the hose right up to the nozzle. I take this little zip tie, the other side, the water is going to get pumped through this main hole of this 8-head nozzle. Then I'm going to attach these 1/4 inch hoses. At the tip of the 1/4 inch hose, we have a dripper and a little spike to go in the cube, and every plant's going to get their own hose with their own dripper. I'm going to assemble these all together. Once I connect this last feeder hose, I can set the whole nozzle in the middle of the tray and connect this 1/2 inch hose right to the middle. The other end I can hook up right to this pump, and I'll secure both ends with the zip tie. Clipping the edges. Now I can take this pump, put it down into my reservoir, take this reservoir, move it right up underneath my table. I can take the exit lines, throw them into the reservoir. And she's ready for some plants. Did I say I was done? Apparently not. I haven't plugged it in yet. I water my plants 3 times a day, so I have a quick on and off switch 3 times a day during the daylight hours. Timer goes into the wall. It's going to power the pump. The pump's down here attached to this hose. The hose is going to sit in the middle here. It's going to deliver the water to all 8 of these little spikes, which is going to give water to the plants. It's going to drain right out of our drainage holes, right back to the reservoir, where it's going to get pumped back to the plants again. Easy. Now I have everything I need for my vegetative grow room. Air, water with this hydroponic system, and light with these 4-foot fluorescents. This is the perfect growing environment. I can start growing right now, but I'm going to start building the flowering room first. Now I'm going to begin construction of the flowering room. First, I'm going to need to bring in some electricity. While I'm at it, I'm going to put up this thermometer right here, because temperature is so important. I always have to know what's going on. Anything above 95 degrees is deadly. The first thing I want to do is put up my 400 watt high pressure sodium lights. Before I do that, I need to put up some hooks. Now all I need to do is hang up this hood and ballast. Now that my hood and my ballast are in place, I'm going to take this 430 watt high pressure sodium with blue spectrum, and I'm going to make sure that there's no fingerprint oil on the bulb. If there is, it'll burn the bulb out immediately, explode. Ugly. I'm going to come right up here and screw it in. Now all I have to do is plug in my 400 watter to this timer that I've set for 12 hours a day. I plug this bad boy into the wall. Let's give her some juice. Takes a minute to warm up. Because my flowering room is enclosed, I really need to focus on air movement. With the buds in here that I'm gonna have, they can mold or fungus up in a matter of days if I don't have a lot of free moving air. So along with this oscillating fan, I also use a squirrel cage fan. Squirrel cages are great at pulling air. So what I do is hang this in the middle of my room, and I attach this 4-inch dryer hose to the end of it. And then I attach the end of my dryer hose to a vent leading outside. I hang it with some bungees, and I've already placed some screws above me. It hangs that easy. I need to plug it in. I set up the table right up underneath the light. I've constructed a drip irrigation hydroponic system here in my vegetative grow room. In contrast to the ebb and flow hydroponic system I want to build for my flowering room. Here's the difference between the two. Over here in my vegetative room, I grow using these 4-inch cubes. Every cube has a dripper. 3 times a day, the pump turns on and the plants get fed. In contrast to the ebb and flow system, which is a planter that is filled with water 3 times a day, the root bowl is inside these little orchid potting pellets, and the water is drained right back here into the reservoir. Now I'm going to put together my ebb and flow hydroponic system for my flowering room. I've got all the parts I need to put this thing and make it in tip-top working order. I have 2 black vinyl hoses, just like I used for the other one.
5/8.
Outer diameter and a 1/2 inch inner diameter. And they're about 3 feet long. I have a pump that'll fit onto the black tubing, timer, aquarium silicone, 3 1-inch nozzles, some screen, small zip ties, and a 5-inch piece of 3/4 outer diameter and 5/8 inner diameter hose, which I'm going to put into the nozzle like that. And when my planter reaches a certain level, it's going to drain back to the reservoir right here. I have my planter. I've cut 2 1-inch holes for 2 nozzles. And I've also cut out 2 holes in my table so the nozzles will fit right in there, no problem. Clean potting rock pellets. And a 20-gallon plastic tub. I'm going to drill one. I'm going to drill one 1-inch hole. I'm going to clean that off. And this is going to be my return line for my overfill line for my planter. And then the other one's going to hook up to my pump, and it's going to pump it up. So now I'm just going to put her together. I'm loading the corners up with aquarium silicone. And I'm screwing in my 1-inch little nozzle. I tighten the nut, and tight's good enough. Silicone around the edges. Silicone around the edges of the inside. I drilled the hole at the bottom of the reservoir so that gravity will push water back down into this tank when it hits a certain level in the planter. What I'm doing here is screwing in my 1-inch nozzles into my planter box. One hole is going to be my exit hole for water, and one hole is going to be my entrance hole for water. Just finger tight. Align it with the holes that I put in the table. Now all I have to do is let the silicone dry and come back and connect all the hoses. Now that the silicone's dry on the 3 holes that I've drilled and the 3 nozzles that I've put in, 2 of the nozzles here in the planter and 1 of the nozzles here on my reservoir. This nozzle's going to be an exit for the water, so I'm going to connect one of my vinyl hoses here, take a zip tie, tighten it up right on the nozzle. Now with the other end, put the reservoir right back here for safekeeping. And I'm going to put the other end into one of the nozzles here on the planter box.
Now with the other hose, I'm going to attach one end to this pump, and I'm going to place it into the reservoir tank. Then with the end of this hose, I'm going to hook it up to the planter box, and it's going to be the water entrance. That's where water is going to get pumped into. I'm going to use this 5-inch piece of 3/4 outer diameter hose, and I'm going to put it in the end of the nozzle. At the top of this, I'm going to cut myself a piece of screen, and I'm going to zip tie it around so none of these little rocks will get caught in the hose. When the water level reaches this level, it's going to automatically drain back to the reservoir tank. Now on this hole over here, I'm going to place a little piece of screen down so the rocks don't get caught up in there. And like I said, that's where the water is going to get pumped in. With all the hoses attached, I zip tie them down so I don't get any leaks. This pump pumps the water in this tank up into this planter through this hole right here. The planter fills up with water. When it gets to this level, it goes in this hose all the way down and returns back into the tank. When the pump shuts off, this, which is the entrance hose, also acts as an exit hose. So all the water is drained from the planter. The roots need oxygen to breathe. All that's left is to plug the pump into the timer that's been set for 3 times a day and plug the timer into the wall. Well, all right, my flowering room is almost done. I've got my oscillating fan and my squirrel cage fan. I have plenty of air movement. I have a 400-watt high-pressure sodium light that's going to be perfect for flowering big buds. And I have a hydroponic system that waters my plants really efficiently. All I need now to make this room perfect is CO2. I'm happy again. I'm happy this time because it's really easy to set up a CO2 tank. After locating myself one of these adapter pressurizer air nozzle things and picking up one of these CO2 tanks, I can easily set up this air hose around where my plants are going to grow. Now I'm going to poke holes in the little black plastic tube. This way, when the CO2 is turned on, it goes right to the plants. Now I can plug this unit into this timer I have the timer programmed for 3 times a day. It turns on for about an hour and it fills this room with CO2. I also turn the fans off for that hour so the plants can get really saturated with the juice. Once I plug this into the wall and it's turned on, the CO2 comes through this hose, loops around the plants, and oozes out of these little holes. This is a really good setup. It's a really good system. If I didn't have the money for this, well, I would just use bubbly water and a sprayer. I can spray this on the plants and they'll get CO2 all day long. Actually, I do both. I'm done. I've finished my vegetative grow room, imitating the long days of summer, and I've finished my flowering room, which imitates fall and winter time. I'm growing. Just finishing up an order for new seed here on the internet. I know if I start with bunk seed, I'm going to get nothing but dirt weed. To avoid this, I always buy the best seeds available. I get them off the internet, in the magazines, or in any of the local coffee shops here around town. I've already picked up some White Widow and AK-47, and I'm going to start by germinating them first. Using distilled water, I fill up the cups with a little. I grab myself my gear. Yeah. With the seeds in water, I put them in a dark place and check up on them several times a day until they have cracked. While I'm waiting for my seeds to crack and begin germination, it's a perfect time for me to get my vegetative room hydroponic system ready for feeding.
I always use distilled or filtered water.
Every unit's different. Some will take 5 gallons, some 10, some 50. Even though I use distilled water, I still have to test my pH. The pH for a hydroponic system should be between 5 and 6. I prefer a 5.8. That's my number. I have an electronic meter reader. Pull it out. All right. Check it out. This one's perfect. But if my water wasn't perfect, I can use this pH up or pH down. Just a drop into this reservoir will level it out and get the water ready for the nutrients. I found these nutrients to be the best when using a hydroponic system. I'm going to mix a half-strength solution for my young plants for the first 2 weeks. After that, it's going to be full strength. There's a lot of different nutrients to choose on the market. I always read the directions before I mess with them. If I mix the nutrients too strong, it's going to kill them. If I mix it too weak, it's not going to be strong enough for the plants to grow. So this is a very critical point, and I need to read the directions over again because I'm not sure how much I'm supposed to mix. Hey, check it out. It's the second day and some of my seeds are already cracking. So with the seeds that are cracked, I'm going to put them in to this 1-inch cube. Be very delicate not to whack the seeds. Okay. This one right here is cracked. And this one right here. I'll put this one in here for later. And these two are going to be White Widow. Hopefully, if they sprout up. And now we're going to get some of this AK-47 in. We got a little sprouter here. Ooh, there's a good one. And we have a little peblito there. And let's get a third AK. All right. The rest of these seeds I can put back in a dark spot and wait for them to crack. But I want to see if these 5 are going to sprout. So I'm going to put this in a dark place and wait to see what happens. As soon as there's a sprout, I'm going to stick them up under lights. Four of my seeds have sprouted, and I've put them up underneath lights. Now I'm going to take them out of these little cubes and put them into these bigger ones. They fit real easy. Okay. I'm going to do this to all 4 of them. After I put them in the bigger cubes, I'm going to set them up just like that so the water drips in them and they get fed 3 times a day. All right, now I can drop these lights to within a foot of the tops of these little seedlings. Well, my seedlings are well on their way. Within a couple months, I'm going to be able to clone them, determine what sex they are, hopefully they'll be girls, and start budding some serious flowers. Before that, all I have to do is maintain them, make sure they make it to 2 months. I have the lights set up 12 inches above the tops. They're going to drop to within 4 inches of the tops once these plants get a little more established. I have a half-strength nutrient solution. I have my pump set for 3 times a day. Once the pump's activated, it comes through this hose and it's going to drip right on the cubes. I always know if the cubes are getting wet or not because I can lift them up. If they're heavy, they're getting water. If they're light, they need water. I've also set up the fan on low as not to bend the little seedlings too much, but when they get a little stronger, I'll turn it to medium and even to high. All I have to do now is wait. After 2 weeks, 2 of the young seedlings have really outdone the other 2. So I've eliminated the weak ones, and I'm left with 1 big, beautiful White Widow seedling. And 1 AK-47. Now I'm going to continue to maintain these plants, watering them 3 times a day, but now I'm going to use full strength nutrient solution. I'm also going to keep the lights within 4 inches of the top of these plants. Hopefully in a couple months they're going to be big and strong enough and ready to get cloned. Wow, it's only been a month and my plants are doing so good. My widow over here, she's looking so strong. There's no bugs. Leaves are looking good. She's getting plenty of water twice a day. My AK-47, she's looking excellent too. Oh, I can't wait to see how much they grow in the next couple weeks. It's been a month and a half, and my plants are doing really, really good. One thing I haven't done is transport them into a bigger planter. See, roots really need a lot of room to grow. As you see, these roots have outgrown the little cubes that they're in. Normally, I would have done this a couple weeks ago, but you know how it is. Inside the planters, I'm going to use this potting soil pellet, just like I use for my flowering room. Last step is taking off this piece of plastic. Well, all right. My seedlings are now big plants. They're 2 months old, they're looking healthy and strong, and they're ready to be cloned to determine what sex they are. At first, I was really intimidated about the whole thought of cloning. The fact is, it's super easy, and it's the only way to surely determine the sex of your plant without budding the plant itself. See, if I was to take this beautiful white widow and put it in my flowering room and bud it, well, I would get either a male or a female flowers. But the way I'm going to have it set up is I'm going to take a clone from this plant, which is essentially cutting off one of the branches and dipping it in some magic juice and taking that little clone and flowering it. Once I see what sex of flower it is producing, then I'll know what sex of flower this white widow is. All I want are females. The pollen from the male interacts with the female bud, and that's what gives me seed. I don't want seed. Now I'm going to go get my cloning gear ready and make my first cut. Lucky for me, cloning's really easy. I had to bring in some supplies, rooting compound, which I stick my stem in, these little cubes, which I wet with distilled water, scissors, rubbing alcohol to clean them because I don't want to carry any diseases from the scissors to the plants, a spray bottle, and a tent, because it's really important to keep my clones very humid. In the early days of their life, they're not going to have a root system, so I'm going to need to feed them water through their leaves. Now I'm going to take 4 clones from each plant. The reason being, I'm going to bud one of the clones in my flowering room to determine what sex the mother is. Once I've determined the sex of the mother, if it's a female, I'm going to keep the other 3 clones that are going to be here in the vegetative room. I'm going to keep them growing up. And when they're of size, I'm going to put them in the flowering room and get some bud. But if that one clone that I previously put in the flowering room comes out a male, then I'm going to destroy all the clones and I'm going to destroy that plant because I don't want any males. The first thing I'm going to do is select a branch that looks worthy of being cloned. This branch right here looks really nice. Why does it look nice? Well, it's about 3-4 inches long. It has 2 branches pretty close to each other, which I can snip, and then I'm going to snip the whole branch away from this stem at a 45-degree angle. And I'm going to dip it into this cloning solution. Once the stem has been dipped in the cloning solution, I'm going to put it inside these cubes. Let me get my cubes wet. I'm going to start by cleaning my scissors. Like I already mentioned, I clean the scissors before I make any cuts into my plants. That way, disease and fungus isn't carried from one plant to the next. I have my cloning gel. I'm going to make my first cut. Okay, I'm going to come right up here. I'm going to come back there. I'm going to come right under it. Not touching it, but right under it at a 45-degree angle. Make a quick cut. I'm going to come and dip it right in the cloning gel. Switch it around in there. Make sure it gets the cloning gel all over. See it? I'm going to take it down here. And then bring it right in there. There you go. Now it's time for me to take a cut from my white widow plant. Clean my scissors. I found my branch. Where was she? I'm going to take the top right there. I'm going to snip that. I'm going to come underneath at a 45-degree angle. Snip. As long as I don't get an air embolism up the middle of the stem, there's a little hole in the middle of the stem. If air gets up in there, the clone dies immediately. But it has to be a good cut, a good slice, or else it's not good for cloning. So I take that, dip it in, push it on. Now I'm going to take my last white widow clone. I've selected this nice branch up here on top. That's the nice top I want. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3 branches down. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3 branches down. I'm going to get in there and snip that branch away. Then I'm going to go right below it to the next branch, and I'm going to snip that one away. Right below that, I'm going to cut the whole stem away from the plant at a 45-degree angle. At which I'm going to dip immediately into my cloning compound. Let it rest in there for a second. Mixing it up. See it? All right. I have enough juice on there. And bring her down to the hole. Slide her in. Pinch the tops to make a nice airtight seal. Tent. Put it on. Once my clones are in here, I drop my lights to sit right just above the tent. Well, all right. My clones have survived their first week and they are looking good. They wilted a little bit a couple days into it, but man, they survived the shock and they have bounced back strong. Now, I'm going to take one clone from Widow and one clone from the AK-47 group, and I'm going to flower it. If female flowers come off these little clones, then I know that these are mother plants. If male flower comes off one of those clones, then I know one of them is a male. So I'm going to get busy right now. I'm going to fill up my planter with this orchid rock potting mix. I've pre-mixed a half-strength solution in the flowering hydroponic unit for the first 2 baby clones that I put in here. Since they're still young, I don't want to shock them with full-strength nutrient. I want them to survive so I could see what sex the corresponding plants are. So that's all mixed up and ready. I had to read the directions again. And the potting soil's in. I'm going to spark this light up, and I'm going to program it for only 12 hours of light a day from 6 a.m. 6 p.m. All right. And I am going to grab this White Widow clone and this AK-47 clone. Say they're her. Wishful thinking. And I'm going to keep the light 30 inches from the tops of these baby clones because they're still young and they're still tender. Normally, the plants are going to go 20 inches away from the bulb when they're real big and budding. Cannabis is like many other things on this planet. There's a male and female plant. The male produces pollen and the female produces THC-filled flowers, the bud. When the male pollen interacts with these buds, that's when seed production begins. I'm going to take advantage of cannabis's natural tendencies in my indoor grow room by eliminating all the males. Thus, I won't have any pollen to worry about. All I'm going to have is bud to harvest. Well, it's been 2.5 weeks since I've taken my clones from my vegetative room and put them here in the flowering room. Now, these 2 clones are really starting to show their bud, their true colors. If you look down here at my AK-47, it is a true blue female. She is gorgeous. You can tell she's a female by looking at the intersections, the nodes, and they'll have little buds on there with lots of white hairs. The white hairs are a true sign that it's a female. Now I know my AK-47 over my vegetative room is a female. And I'm super, super fortunate because my white widow is a female too. Looking right up in here at this top, beautiful top bud. Got nice white hairs, nice white stigmas coming out. I'm really, really excited. I don't have any males in any of my garden. Males differ from females, where the females have their buds with white hairs. Males would have these little pod-like structures. Sometimes they stand just 2 pod structures, one side by side. Other times they have whole bunches of pods that kind of dangle off the little nodes, a lot like these extra large version would be these grapes. When it's time for the males to pollinate, these grapes split open at the end like a little flower, and they send pollen all over the garden. When this pollen interacts with a female bud, the female stops producing THC and starts producing seed. And that's what I really want to avoid, and it looks like I have, because both of these clones are female, so I know all my garden is female. Because I flowered the 2 clones and they both came up female, I know that this white widow and this AK-47 are both female. I also know that all the clones I took from these 2 plants are going to be female. So I'm really excited because all I have to do now is keep these plants healthy and alive in this vegetative state, in this vegetative room, and never bud them. I'm just going to keep them here living and loving life. Every month or so, I'm going to take clippings and I'm going to grow clones. Once the clones reach a certain size, then I'm going to take them over and I'm going to bud them and I'm going to get sick, wonderful nugs. Now that I know that all my clones are female, I'm going to set them up for fast growth. I want them to get in the flowering room as soon as possible. All right. Well, they've been here for 2.5 weeks, and they already have a great root structure showing. That's the AK-47. All right, here's our white widow. So here's the little root ball in here, and we're going to get 4-inch cubes. to water them down. And we're going to take our female clones and we're going to plop them right inside the cube. Once we have that hooked up, we're going to take one of our hoses, slide the hose right in, and we're going to set it right down in the planter with the lights just a couple inches right off their tops. Hi girls, you've done such a good job. You've served your purpose. You've shown me that all the plants in the vegetative room are female, and your sisters are gonna throw me really good buds, really fat buds. But I'm afraid you two aren't, because you're so small, you're not gonna be able to support the buds that's gonna be growing on your small little stem. So I'm gonna take you out here. You did such a good job. Well, these clones are a little over 1 month old. It's been a month since this clone was sitting right here on this white widow plant. And look at her go. She has a wonderful root system established in this cube, and she's well on her way to good growth. Once she gets between 40 and 50 centimeters tall, I'm going to take her and put her into the flowering room. Soon after that, I'm going to have some really nice bud. I've been waiting for this day for a long time. The clones that I have taken from the mother over 2 months ago are doing awesome. They're over 20 inches, 25 inches tall, and they're ready to get flowered. They're tired of summer and they're waiting for fall. So all I have to do is pick them up and put them in the hydroponic system in my flowering room. Be careful of the roots. There's only room for 4 plants in my bucket. My planter has room for 4 plants, and I'm finished putting them all in, carried right up to the stem. The other 2 clones in the vegetative root, I'm just going to sit there and let them grow for a while. Every one of these plants is going to throw me at least 1 ounce of bud. So within 2 months, I'm going to have myself a 1/4 pound. The light's been preset for 12 hours a day. I've just finished changing the water and putting in full strength nutrient solution. I want full strength now. The water's set for 3 times a day, and so is the CO2 system. 3 times a day, 15 minutes at a time. I've also set it so my fans turn off during that time so my plants can use all that CO2. The 400 watt high pressure sodium is set for 12 hours a day. all they got to do is grow. And give them some privacy. Let them think about the job they have to do. All right. Well, we're 1 week into budding, 1 week after taking the clones from the vegetative room and putting them over here in the flowering room. And now I'm going to top the plants. I top the plants because instead of getting one bud, I get two big fat ones. Topping the plants is really easy. I follow the main stem from the root all the way up to the top. With a clean pair of scissors, I just snip the top. I do this to my whole crop 1 week into the flowering cycle. All right. Now that I've topped my whole garden, my plants have done some growing in the one week that they've been here. And I want to make sure the tops aren't too close to the 400-watt bulb. Ah, perfect. 18 to 22 inches from the bulb is a perfect distance from the tops of my plants to be. Now I'm going to give them some rest. This white widow is 3 weeks into flowering. And the buds are looking really good. Ah, 6 weeks into flowering. And check out these nugs. You ladies are doing good work. About 2 or 3 more weeks, and they're going to be ready to rock. Well, all right. It's been just 2 months since I've put these 4 clones from my vegetative room over here into my flowering room. And look at the size of this AK-47. This is the most dank stuff I've seen in a long time. I know this white widow's ready to harvest because half of the white hairs have turned a beautiful orange brown. And the trichome crystals, the little crystals on the bud, man, they're standing straight up and they have little crystal clear caps on their tops. That is a perfect time for the harvest. I'm gonna go get my gear right now. Thank you, ladies. You've done so good. All right. Whoa. It's a sickie. The AK-47. thick old stem. Oh, sorry, honey. Thank you very, very, very much for your wonderful work. Ooh. Now I have to take the fan leaves off these plants and take all the little leaves off and hang up the bud. I can now clean up this flowering room. Root balls are really easy to get out. That was a nice AK-47. I clean up all these rocks with bleach water, and then I clear them out really good with fresh water. And then I can take 4 new clones from the vegetative room, put them right in here, and I'll have fresh bud again in 2 months. It's really, really important to take the fan leaves off. So I trim 1 branch off at a time. And with these nice pair of shearing scissors, get right underneath and trim all the big leaves off. Once the big leaves have been trimmed off, I come alongside the bud and just trim it all the way into the white stigmas. I love smoking bud. Leaf just doesn't do it for me. So I clear it up good. All right, and just like that. And then I separate this last little nug from the stem, and I come right to this box setup I made, and I hang it just like that. Oh, this is a nice one. Hey, check this one out. I got some work to do, so I'm just going to get cutting away. Take this eggnog, pull it away from the stem, place it right down. Last one of the bunch. Hang it up. All right. Now I can go put this box in a dark, well-ventilated spot, and I'm going to check it every day, and it's going to be about a week, and I'm going to have fresh chronic. Man. Apparently the results of no water or too hot of temperature. In this case, it was no water. My pump must have broke, and these grows didn't get any water. And this is what can happen to the plants within a matter of hours when the environment breaks down. Yeah, Yeah, you're right. You're right, man. Bugs bum me out.
Living in a box with no line. I got to get out and see what's inside. So many places.
It's been 7 days and my bud is dry. I got more than a quarter pound of bud, more than I expected. If I keep up the daily maintenance in my grow room, I can get a quarter pound of bud every 2 months, right on schedule. So now you know.